His name was Thomas Mitchell, 72 years old, white beard neatly trimmed, that same red jacket he wore every day pulled over his faded t-shirt. He'd been watching the ceremony preparations from the visitors' bench for 3 days now, saying nothing, just observing with that serious expression that never seemed to change. The younger soldiers barely noticed him. Just another old man with time to kill, they figured. Another retiree with nowhere better to be. They had no idea that the cane he leaned on wasn't for show, that the limp in his right leg came from shrapnel that doctors never quite managed to remove, that the hands gripping that wooden handle had once performed feats they practiced every day and couldn't master. The ceremony was important. A senator was coming. A big deal for the base, for the unit, for everyone's career. The honor guard had been drilling for weeks, but Private Jensen kept dropping the rifle during the presentation of arms, every single time. The weight distribution was off, the drill sergeant said. The grip was wrong. The timing was terrible. Jensen's confidence crumbled a little more with each failure, and now with just 2 days until the ceremony, panic had set in. The other guards were getting nervous too. One weak link could ruin everything. Make them all look incompetent. Embarrass the entire unit. Thomas watched Jensen pick up the rifle again, saw the tremor in the young man's hands, recognized the fear. He'd seen it before, felt it himself once, a lifetime ago when the stakes were even higher and the consequences of failure meant more than just embarrassment. He shifted his weight on the cane, considered walking away, minding his own business like he'd learned to do. Old men offering advice weren't usually welcome. Old men in worn jackets and sad eyes were invisible most days. But something in Jensen's face reminded him of someone. A young soldier from another time, a kid who'd needed help and received it. The drill sergeant dismissed the squad for lunch, frustration evident in every clipped syllable. Jensen stayed behind, practicing alone, dropping the rifle twice more in as many minutes. Thomas stood slowly, cane supporting his weight, and began the long walk across the parade ground. Each step deliberate, each step painful. Jensen didn't notice him approaching until the shadow fell across the rifle. The private looked up, startled, saw the old man with the cane and the serious expression and immediately straightened slightly, some ingrained respect for elders kicking in despite his frustration. Thomas didn't say anything at first, just stood there, eyes on the rifle, then on Jensen's hands, then back to the rifle. The silence stretched. Jensen shifted uncomfortably, waiting for another lecture, another criticism, another person telling him he wasn't good enough. Then Thomas spoke, voice quiet, barely above a murmur. "May I?" He gestured toward the rifle. Jensen blinked, confused, glanced around to see if anyone was watching, then handed it over, half expecting the old man to inspect it and point out some flaw he'd missed. Thomas took the weapon, and something changed. The cane remained hooked over his left forearm. His hands found positions on the rifle that looked effortless, natural, like the weapon had been made for those exact hands. His stance shifted, weight balanced despite the injured leg, and suddenly he didn't look quite so old anymore. What happened next would be talked about on that base for years. Thomas began the manual of arms, moving through positions that Jensen had been practicing for months. But where Jensen's movements were stiff and uncertain, Thomas flowed. The rifle became an extension of his body, spinning, pivoting, rising and falling with precision that seemed impossible for a man his age, for a man with a cane, for anyone who wasn't a master of the craft. He executed a spin that made the weapon blur, caught it one-handed, shifted it behind his back and brought it forward again without breaking rhythm. Then, in a move that defied physics and common sense, he balanced the rifle on one finger, spinning it like a basketball, the weight perfectly distributed, the motion controlled and steady. Jensen's jaw dropped. The rifle that had betrayed him all morning, that had felt awkward and unwieldy in his hands, danced for this old man like it was weightless. Thomas completed the routine, brought the rifle to present arms with a snap that echoed across the empty parade ground, then handed it back to Jensen. The entire demonstration had taken maybe 90 seconds. 90 seconds that shattered every assumption the young private had made. "Who are you?" Jensen whispered, the rifle suddenly feeling different in his hands, lighter somehow, full of possibility instead of dread. Thomas's expression didn't change, that same sad seriousness that defined his face. "Someone who used to do this," he said simply. "A long time ago." He turned to leave, cane tapping against concrete, but Jensen called after him. "Wait, please. Can you show me? Can you teach me?" Over the next 2 days, Thomas came back. Early mornings before the drill sergeant arrived, late afternoons after official practice ended. He worked with Jensen, adjusting grip pressure, correcting weight distribution, teaching the subtle shifts in balance that made the difference between control and chaos. He never raised his voice, never showed frustration, just demonstrated, observed, corrected, encouraged. The other Honor Guard members started noticing, started gathering to watch, started asking questions. Thomas deflected most of them. He was just a guy who knew some things, just someone with time and experience. But one of the younger soldiers, curious and internet savvy, started digging, asked around, made some calls, found an old roster from 40 years back, found a name that matched, found a service record that made his eyes widen, found photographs that showed a much younger man in dress blues, holding a rifle, standing in front of the White House, found commendations, found records of performances before presidents and foreign dignitaries, found a legacy that belonged to legends. The day of the ceremony arrived. Senator Bradford was due at 1400 hours. The Honor Guard assembled, Jensen among them, rifle in hand, confidence still fragile but stronger than it had been. Thomas sat in the visitor section, red jacket bright against the grey bleachers, cane resting beside him, watching with that same serious expression. The ceremony began. The senator arrived. The Honor Guard executed their routine, and Jensen didn't drop the rifle, not once. Every movement crisp, controlled, the weapon an extension of his body just like Thomas had taught him. When they finished, when the senator nodded approval and the base commander smiled, Jensen's eyes found Thomas in the crowd, found the old man watching with something that might have been pride beneath the sadness. After the ceremony, as people dispersed and congratulations were offered, the drill sergeant approached Thomas. He'd heard the rumours by then, heard about the morning practices, heard about the old man with the cane who could spin a rifle like magic. "Sir," the sergeant said, voice formal now, respectful in a way it hadn't been when Thomas was just another observer. "I understand you served in the old guard. I understand you were one of the best." Thomas nodded slowly, acknowledging the truth without elaborating. The sergeant hesitated, then asked the question that had been bothering him. "Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you tell us who you were?" The old man's eyes, sad and serious, met the sergeant's. "Because it didn't matter who I was," he said quietly. "It mattered who he could become." Jensen approached then, rifle still in hand, and did something that surprised everyone. He came to attention, presented arms with perfect form, held the salute. Thomas, after a moment's hesitation, returned it. The gesture connecting past to present, experience to potential, one generation of service to another. The young private's voice was thick with emotion when he spoke. "Thank you, sir, for seeing me when no one else did, for believing I could do it." The base commander, having heard the commotion and the rumours, arrived with questions of his own. Thomas Mitchell's service record was pulled, verified, displayed. The photographs were real, the commendations genuine. He'd served in the 3rd Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard, for 12 years, had performed at state funerals, presidential inaugurations, ceremonies that defined moments in American history, had trained dozens of honor guards, had been considered one of the finest rifle handlers in the regiment's history, had left the service with honours and had quietly disappeared into civilian life, never speaking about it, never seeking recognition, just carrying the skills and the memories and the sadness that came from watching friends fall and years pass. The senator, informed of the situation, requested a meeting, wanted to thank Thomas personally, wanted to hear his story. But Thomas declined, politely but firmly. He'd done what he came to do, helped a young soldier find his confidence, passed on skills that mattered. The recognition wasn't necessary. The ceremony wasn't about him. It never had been. He stood to leave, cane in hand, red jacket a splash of colour against the institutional grey of the base. But Jensen stopped him one more time. "Sir, would you come back? Would you help train the others? We could use someone like you." Thomas paused, considered, then shook his head slowly. "You don't need me," he said. "You've got the skill now. You've got the knowledge. What you do with it, how you pass it on, that's up to you. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. He walked away then, across the parade ground where he'd spent so many quiet mornings watching, each step supported by the cane, each step carrying the weight of years and service and sacrifice. The soldiers watched him go. This old man in a red jacket who'd reminded them that skill isn't about youth or strength or appearance. It's about dedication, practice, and the willingness to help others succeed. Jensen stood holding the rifle that no longer felt like a burden, understanding finally that the weapon had never been the problem. His belief in himself had been. And an old veteran with sad eyes and a cane had seen that, had known that, had fixed that without ever making it about himself. The ceremony was deemed a success. Jensen went on to train other honor guards, passing on the techniques Thomas had taught him, always crediting the old man who'd appeared when needed and disappeared when the job was done. The story spread through the base, through the regiment, through the networks of soldiers who understood what it meant. Not the rifle spinning or the one-finger balance, though. Those were impressive. But the quiet act of service, the passing of knowledge, the refusal to seek glory, the understanding that real honor isn't about recognition, it's about making others better. It's about seeing potential where others see failure. It's about standing up when standing is hard and walking away when the applause begins. Thomas Mitchell returned to his quiet life, his small apartment, his routine of coffee and newspapers and long walks with the cane. He didn't tell anyone about what had happened, didn't seek attention or praise, just carried the satisfaction of knowing that somewhere a young soldier stood a little taller, held a rifle a little steadier, believed in himself a little more, and that was enough. That had always been enough. The red jacket hung in his closet, the cane rested by the door, and the old veteran with the white beard and the sad, serious eyes understood what so many never learn, that the truest measure of skill isn't what you can do, but what you can teach others to do, that the highest form of service isn't the ceremony or the medal or the recognition. It's the quiet moment when you help someone else succeed, then step back into the shadows and let them shine.